After its 2015 revival to coincide with the start of the new film trilogy, many people walked away from Star Wars Battlefront feeling a little bit disappointed. Where was the single player, they asked? Where were the classes? Why is it always just AT-ATs doing the assaulting? And why are we being split up from one another by a DLC season pass? EA and DICE have addressed all of these complaints and shortcomings in a rather emphatic fashion with Star Wars Battlefront 2, creating this broad, expansive, and fun all-round shooter. But sadly, all of this good work has been undercut by an unpopular business model and a muddled progression system, to the extent that they've had to make dramatic changes on the eve of the game's release. But let's start with what the game gets right. The single-player story follows Iden Verso, who is the commander of the crack special forces group known as Inferno Squad, and it picks up on the eve of the Battle of Endor. It's a great point in time to start with, as we get to play the bad guys and see them crushed by defeat. There is an air of predictability for where the story goes from here, and the character arc that Iden Verso goes on is one that you will see coming miles off. It also won't surprise you that the Emperor had yet another Doomsday weapon tucked away just as a contingency plan. However, the story does feel rather disjointed, which is partly down to the way that it jumps between you playing as Iden and also letting you control a number of the heroes of the rebellion, taking their hero characters from the multiplayer and transposing them into single-player missions. It means that while Iden gets to kick ass both on the ground and in the cockpit of a starfighter, the story is in just such a rush to develop her character arc, and it skips through the Empire's rapid decline just that little bit too quickly. The story's just that little bit aimless without this central drive all the way through it. It's still a fun Star Wars romp though, and just what the fans ordered after the first Battlefront. More importantly for this game, it gels seamlessly with the online multiplayer and prepares you for using different star card abilities and heroes in that side of the game. Adding variety to the game has been another key focus, and this has been done in a number of ways. For one thing, there's now classes to choose between, meaning that you don't see literally everybody running around with jetpacks and homing grenade launchers anymore. Instead, you have loose archetypal roles such as the assault, the heavy, the officer who actually has buffs, shields and turrets, that kind of thing, and then you've got the sniping specialist. Up in space for Starfighter Assault is then the fighter as the middle ground spaceships, you've got the interceptor who are faster but less heavily armoured, and you've got the bomber class which are obviously slower and deal a lot more damage. In truth, you're all a kind of cannon fodder, whether you're a clone, droid, rebel or a stormtrooper, as Galactic Assault is really all about playing the objective in order to win the match. You're now spawned in waves alongside up to 4 other players. You might be in the same match as your friends, but you can't directly squad up with them, and so the players that you spawn alongside are highlighted yellow in an attempt to try and get you to stick together a little bit. The intention there is that you stick together in order to earn a boost to your battle points, as well as simply engendering team play within you. Speaking of battle points, these are earned as you play in a particular match, and they're then spent on a variety of vehicles, special units such as the Jetpack Trooper, and hero units which range from Darth Maul through to classics like Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker, through to new additions like Rey from the new trilogy. It's a better system than the random tokens of the first game, and it still means that you will probably find Darth Vader roaming through Echo Base on Hoth later in the battle. That is, if someone's unlocked him. The structure of both Starfighter and Galactic Assault has been given a more narrative feel to them. AT-ATs will still march through several maps, as will MTTs in the battles set during the prequel films, but they are only part of the battle this time around, and taking them down is more freeform as the defenders have to try and pick up and fire missile launchers to make them vulnerable to attack. They're complemented by control points and capture and defend objectives, and though 1 or 2 maps are still a little bit unbalanced, such as the start of the Endor map where the rebels have to try and take 3 objectives, not just 2, and then there's the open and sparse level of Naboo, which is still the least interesting map in this game for me, but on the whole they are very well done. It also helps that the game is simply gorgeous. Just as with the 2015 game, it captures the look, feel and sound of Star Wars so incredibly well, but DICE have also been able to put their own spin on things quite a few times. Hoth is still got the crisp snow, but it's basking in the glow of a rising sun, and Endor's rebel assault occurs at night as opposed to during the day. It's just as spectacular up in space for Starfighter Assault, whether attacking a space station, defending a rebel base in an asteroid belt, or fighting in the middle of a cloud of ship debris. The trick here is that many of the objectives have got multiple phases. You've also got plenty of AI ships to lend a hand, both in keeping the 12 versus 12 battles feeling hectic and action-packed, and also as ships to try and escort in to deal a lot of damage or try and destroy in order to help preserve your defense. These modes are then handily complemented by Strike, which is a smaller scale objective based mode. You've got Blast, which is team deathmatch in everything but name, and then there's the Hero Battle, which is a palette cleansing mode with 3 heroes on each side. Arcade then lets you play a bunch of scenarios and battles against AI, but they pale in comparison to the main campaign. And so we come to the elephant in the room. It's the system of loot crates, microtransactions, and having some of the more iconic heroes needing to be unlocked. DICE and EA have made changes since the open beta, so that weapons and the top tier of star cards are unlocked through play and crafting, as opposed to being found in loot crates, and they've even made some sweeping cuts to the pricing of locked heroes literally hours before the review embargo lifted. The system as a whole can give you freedom to choose your own unlocks, but it remains an unbalanced progression system that just feels too random and unrewarding. And on another level, it just feels so cynical to have this constant back and forth, as if EA and DICE are trying to see where our limit is with what we will accept. While that does feel distasteful, I do feel that they have now, at launch, found a relatively happy balance, even if it does feel that the rewards that you get from each match are just a bit too low. And again, these rewards are something that DICE are going to continue to look at and adjust, and their willingness to do so has been shown several times in the last few weeks, albeit under significant pressure from public opinion. Just hours before the review embargo lifted, as I've already said, they have slashed the cost of hero characters. So Chewie was previously 40,000 credits, and he's now 10,000 credits. Luke was 60,000 credits, he's now 15,000 credits. Yes, there is still a grind here of potentially 10 hours if all you're doing is playing matches and not unlocking rewards, and it is somewhat objectionable from the point of view that the series has not had this kind of thing in the past. However, the characters are now much more easy to obtain. Unfortunately, another thing that has been toned down is the reward that you get from completing the campaign. When I finished it, prior to release, I got a 20,000 credit stash in the final loot crate, but that has been toned down to 5,000 credits. It means that overall I finished the campaign with about 27,000 credits, and that would have come down to 12,000 credits. However, it does come alongside a bunch of second tier uncommon cards for each of the main classes that you will have received as you're playing. Even without that golden parachute, there is a range of milestones to aim for when starting out online, and the promise of daily, weekly and faction objectives once the first seasonal post-release content starts on the 5th of December. You will need these rewards in order to make significant progress, as you're only earning a few hundred credits per match, and this is also largely tied to time played, with only the minimum of boosts depending on your actual performance. For the overall progression though, you will obviously still have to indulge in the game system of loot crates as well. Split between trooper crates, hero and starfighter crates, there's a sliding cost from 4,000 credits down to 2,000 credits, and you're only guaranteed 1 or 2 applicable cards in each box, with the rest being emotes, star cards for other types of character, credits and crafting parts. While you might get lucky and get exactly what you want, it's really the crafting parts that will let you unlock whatever starcraft you want and then upgrade them for higher power. They're split between alternative abilities for your characters and stat buffs, and some star cards are feeling a bit too overpowered, and balancing them should really be quite high on DICE's to-do list. It's a bit balmy that you can triple the time it takes for a missile to lock onto your starfighter, even if it can to a certain extent be then countered by another star card that reduces the lock-on time of missiles by up to half. That's just one of a number of instances where star card power and how it scales through the different rarity levels needs to be reconsidered, especially when you can brute force your progress via microtransactions. Now, In fairness, DICE have stated that players will be matched based on both rank and the power of the star cards that they own, but having said that, on the evidence of the 10-hour trial for Xbox One and PC that was running for the last 5 or 6 days, I can't remember exactly, it will take time for this to settle down, as there were always one or two players who had clearly bought their way to the top of the star card pile. Ultimately, with this kind of matchmaking, it should still be skill and teamwork that will determine a battle's outcome. And so what we're left with is a confused, messy progression system that has just left a bad taste in so many people's mouths. I personally don't feel that at launch it takes off too much of a shine from the actual core gameplay. But microtransactions are such a hot topic at the moment, and I can see that a lot of people have been very, very much put off by this entire game just from this side of things. What's clear is that EA and DICE have really been finding their own feet in this foray as well, trying to find out what the consumers will accept, what will work for them as a business model to make as much money as possible from this venture, and everything in between. Because of the last minute changes by EA and DICE, this video has been created after the review embargo. Of course, then we will post our review, and it's only like 3 hours after this that we discover that the reward that you get from the single player campaign is reduced as well, down from 20,000. And so then I'm questioning, is the score that I gave the review in my written form, which I'm not going to change, is an 8 out of 10, is that the right score for this game? At various times over the last 2 or 3 days, it could have been a 7 out of 10, it could even have been a 6 out of 10. Honestly, I do have faith that DICE are trying to do the right thing with the progression system here, but there is certainly the nagging cynicism that this is purely about business and milking as much cash from people as possible. Perhaps the greatest irony through all of this is that it's fear, anger, and hatred just like being spouted onto Reddit. Like there's even death threats going at the developers, which is not okay in the slightest. But all of this is pushing Star Wars Battlefront 2 back on the path towards the light. It's pushing DICE and EA to do something closer to the right thing. At the end of the day, if you want to buy this game, buy it, but you need to be able to go into this understanding what you're getting yourself into. One thing that this entire review process has highlighted for me is just how subjective and circumstantial all of this actually is. Star Wars Battlefront 2 has had its reputation just dragged through the mud thanks to its underlying business model and how it's been tied to character progression. But that does distract hugely from how much it actually improves on the first game. There's much better variety in Galactic and Starfighter Assault, there's character classes now, and there's team play which is gently encouraged. And behind the loot boxes there is actually a broader and more free-form progression for players to explore. So, as ever, thanks for watching our review. If you have enjoyed it, please do like, subscribe, and share it with people. I know it's a more positive, a more conciliatory review than some other people would have liked to see. But either way, I hope you found it informative, and hopefully I will see you again soon. Goodbye!
Transport's making a run for it. Thanks.